Hello, this is Sandro Forte, and today in finishing off the telephone path, we're going to talk about step number 4. Hopefully you never get to step number 4, you go from number 3 straight to number 5, but should you receive an objection, step number 4 is the objection handling sequence, then there needs to be a scientific approach adopted in order to get to number 5 on the telephone path. So just to remind you, number 3 is the message. You've shared that message of specializing in helping people become financially more successful, or whatever it is you have as your own particular message, and then you move straight to the hotel question. However, should there be an objection, like I'm too busy, like my accountant deals with it, or whatever you happen to get by way of an objection, we will be moving then to step number 4. And the mistake a lot of advisors make is they don't know how to handle objections. So unfortunately, what then happens is you go off at a tangent and spend the next 10 or 15 minutes handling 1, 2, or possibly even 3 objections, and possibly getting to a point where the prospective client says, I'm not very interested, and then they hang up. Bit of a waste of 10, 15, 20 minutes. Remember, a telephone call, a very effective telephone call, should take no more than about 30 seconds, 45 seconds if you get an objection. How do you handle an objection in 15 seconds? Buckle up and listen up. So there is a scientific 3-step approach to handling objections. I've covered this before on videos, but just to show you where it slots into the telephone path. So somebody says something like, I'm too busy. There are 3 very important parts of the process to cover. The first one is to 100% welcome the objection. Now, I did not say agree with the objection. I said welcome the objection. And welcoming an objection would be something as simple as, I'm so glad or so pleased you mentioned that. The other one might be, particularly if the objection is of a personal nature. For example, they don't particularly like your broker-dealer. They say, oh, all you advisors are the same. You're all just salespeople and transactional. In other words, something very, very personal. Clearly, at that moment, you wouldn't say something like, I'm so pleased you mentioned that, because that would be a bit weird. On that particular occasion, you would say something like, thank you for being so honest. That's another good way of handling an objection in terms of welcoming that objection. So step number 1 is to 100%, think of the number 100% welcome the objection. Step number 2 is to create empathy. Empathy, as we know, is the basic building block of all human interaction and relationships. How do we do that? How do we create empathy in one single sentence? Something as simple as, if I was you, I would be thinking the same way. Somebody says during a fact-find meeting, I can't afford it, I don't have any money. And yet, during the fact-find, you've seen that they have plenty of net disposable income. But maybe in their mind, they're thinking about spending that money on a future event, for example. So there's a disconnect between what they're thinking and what we see on a piece of paper. And there is a temptation, of course, to then say, but you have lots of net disposable income. Going back to what I've said before, that is not welcoming an objection, that is pushing against the objection, which creates a bigger problem. The empathy bit is letting the prospective client know that you sit on the same side of the fence as them. You understand what it is they're saying, and you have a degree of empathy. That's a very important part of creating a connection with the person you're speaking to. So something like, if I was you, I'd be thinking the same way. If I was you, I would be thinking, I don't have a lot of money at the moment. Why would I be wanting to spend it on insurance, for example? Or why would I, if I was really, really busy, why would I want to spend my time talking to a financial professional? So that's the empathy bit. Number 3 is the logical question. This is really important. It's the one part of the telephone path that really needs a lot of practice. There's no point in turning up to a client meeting or picking up the telephone to a prospective client and thinking that you can wing this, thinking you can just make this up as you go along. It has to be learned. And what's really important about what you're going to hear next is that the sentence has to end with the words of value, not of value to you. As we know, left brain controls the logical side of one's thought process, and the right side is the emotional response. And in financial planning, in any kind of sales environment, we have to balance left and right brain in order to take a client to a place where they can make an informed decision. Everything, if we just deal with the emotional aspects, then we can get them to buy in to what it is that they think that they should do, what is right to do from an emotional perspective. But unless you can justify it with logic, can I afford it? Does it make sense? then you're not going to get to yes. Conversely, if it's all about the logic, if this makes perfect sense to protect your family in the event of death, but there's no emotional attachment to it, again, the client is going to say no. So there has to be a correlation, a connection between left and right brain. Now, when it comes to objection handling, we are asking purely a logical question. The reason for that is when you ask a logical question, the answer will always be yes. It might be it's a statement of fact, effectively. So when I add the word to you at the end of this sentence you're about to hear, it becomes emotional. If you remove the to you and you just end with the words of value, it stays logical, and that's where you get the yes. So what I would typically say is, somebody just said to me, I've got no money, I can't afford it. I would say something like, I'm so pleased you mentioned that. If I was you, I'd be thinking the same way, and never use the word but. And if I could show you how I work with my other clients to create money they didn't have before they met me, would that be of value? Now think about that just for a moment. It's almost impossible to say no. And just one little caveat here, if you do get a prospective client who says no to a logical question, then respectfully, I would suggest it's what I call coat time. Coat time involves getting your coat and leaving the meeting, the telephone call, metaphorically, because if somebody can't answer yes to a logical question, you'd have to then question whether or not their brain is wired correctly, and that may not necessarily be the type of client you want to be dealing with. So just to recap, 3-step process: 100% E for empathy, and then the logical question. So 100% welcome, create some empathy, ask the logical question. Now, if you go to my resources in the website, and if you follow this series of videos, I cover 6 or 7 common objections. The good news here is that wherever I've been, to the 88 countries in the world, every single objection is the same, more or less. So those 6 or 7 common objections that we hear are covered in the resources that will be available to you for free. So check in, check them out, learn them, and once you've learned them, you should be able to make those telephone calls with confidence. Remember, if you can get from step number 3 to step number 5 effectively, great. It's a 30-second call. If not, take one step back, use the 3-step process to handle the objection, and then move seamlessly to step number 5, which is back to the hotel question. I was about to wish you good luck, but I don't think you need that. Just learn it and apply it.